It's good to see you.
Hi, Greg. Nice to see you too.
Yeah, welcome. Thanks for talking to me. So this is the first episode of Outer Sounds interview, and we're talking to Ellen Fullman today. We have selected her new album, which is coming out on Besom Press very soon. It's called Music for the Man Who Grew Common in Wisdom. And we're here to just chat with her about the record and about music and life and whatever else comes up. So, this record's interesting. I got a chance to listen to it a few times, and people obviously know you for your long string instrument work, and this is quite a departure from that. And if you want to, love to hear talk about how you made this piece. I know it was commissioned by Deborah Hay, right? And just how you made it and kind of where you were, geographically and also musically at the time, and just kind of how it all came together.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on, Greg. I appreciate this chance to share some about this album. And as you say, it's a departure. But I was in the middle of working on the long string instrument. So I was in Austin, Texas. Let's see. Let me think. I'm trying to remember exactly the circumstance. I am fairly certain that I already had my large rehearsal space. It's called the Candy Factory for my instrument.
That was in Austin?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I met a recording engineer who worked at the public radio station, and his name was Glenn English, and he had a collection of gear. He bought equipment for doing sound design for theater, and he kind of did that as a hobby. And but anyway, I asked him if I could work with his equipment, and what he had was like a studio set up in his living room, like on the floor. And yeah, and so he had a Studer Revox half-track open reel tape deck, a digital recorder called a PCM processor. That was in the early days. You used videotape, and then you had the separate box to process the digital signal onto videotape.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
And it was a stereo machine, and to multitrack, I swapped the physical tape back and forth and built my layers that way, because in those days a multitrack machine was prohibitive in cost. I mean,
Right.
It was like having a Studer Revox half-track was an amazing piece of gear that was like studio gear.
Yeah.
And then I had a wonderful what's now a very boutique microphone. Let's see. Oh, what was it? It's a Sennheiser C20 or C60. I can't remember, but it's the microphone that's like it has a stereo.
Okay.
It's a stereo, but you can also change the configuration of the microphone.
Right.
And that was great. I had everything I needed, and he had just acquired this Prophet sampler, which was so fun to explore. I mean, and what I did was I just worked from a musique concrète point of view, where I just made recordings of very some of these first things that, say, a sound artist might reach for, blowing on a bottle,
Yeah.
dropping a little piece of broken glass.
Yeah.
I had some lumber that was really had dried. It was I found these old pieces of I think it was either cedar or fir, but this lumber had just a beautiful tone. And I
Right.
made it like a wind chime out of these huge pieces of 2x4s that I hung in his living room. I worked with the sound of water splashing in the bathtub, and of my own voice. And then I also uh, made some recordings just of kind of ambience,
Right.
yeah. So using those simple elements, you know,
Yeah,
and
there's a really nice variety of sounds on the record, and it's um, it's interesting because it's very like episodic. You know, there's kind of like discrete sections where different sounds happen, and you kind of build up some layers of these different sounds you've described, um, which is different from your long string work, obviously, because that's very like horizontal music, right? That's kind of static and has a lot to do with harmony and stuff. So, um, had you made other types of sort of like music concrete pieces earlier than this, or was this
yeah.
kind of just a fun, like liberating, experiment or experience to do that?
No, it really expressed the place from which I started,
Yeah,
say in art school, you know.
right,
Yeah, so that's kind of the spirit in which the long string instrument, was developed as well.
right.
So
Because your
just,
background is
mhm.
it was in like sculpture and performance art,
Yes.
right? Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's great. How did you end up in Austin? I'm curious about that.
Mhm. Well, it was due to this piece. So Deborah Hay invited me to collaborate, and it was as you say, episodic type work. It was a 1 hour long performance, uh, divided into three 20-minute sections, which she developed one per year.
Okay.
So we started, she invited me on the first 20 minutes, and then just invited me to continue to, collaborate. Probably having something to do with the fact that the first 20 minutes brought me to Austin, and I landed there and to work and just never left. I was like,
Okay.
a lot of people do that
Yeah.
in Austin. So I had just a really a rough road to hoe in New York City with starting my long string instrument. At
Right.
that time, it was just a project that just doesn't fit
Right.
in New York. I mean, it was like I
You
was on
probably
the roof.
needed a nice
Yeah, no, I need
space to
space.
work in. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like on the roof, or I was, like house sitting Phil Niblock's loft,
Right.
or yeah, going to Europe on tour so that I could work.
Yeah. Right.
um, and it was just catch as catch can, and not so much fun. And then things just sort of economically continued to get worse, tighter in New York, and I wasn't able to come across the freelance work in electronics that I was used to. And I just took on a full time job. And then in doing so, that left my apartment empty all day, every day, which made it vulnerable for a break in. And
Oh
so
no.
I was just like, everything was broken into, smashed. It was like I was really, you know, ready to, abandon
Yeah.
ship.
It was time to get out of there. It sounds.
Yeah.
Um, and so how long did you stayed in Austin for a while, and then did you end up in California? That's where you are now, right?
Yes, I'm in
Yeah.
Berkeley now.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I wandered around my adult life. I've wandered around trying to look actually for a home, trying to look for support for my work,
Right.
which is yeah. So obviously I've I feel settled now, but there was it was just like there's not much of a home for the kind of out there type work
Right.
in this country. But anyway, but I went to all of the cool cities. I moved up to the Twin Cities. Went to school in Kansas City, New York City. Then I came down to Austin, which is totally hipster city, and then I moved to Seattle, and then I was in Tokyo for half a year, and Berlin for a year,
Yeah.
and And then finally, Berkeley, Bay Area.
Yeah. Was the
So,
when you were in Austin, so you recorded these pieces in the late 80s, right? And
yeah.
somewhere around there. And when you were there at the time, I know Austin's like known as a big music city, but were there people doing like more experimental music there at the time or not really?
Well, I mean, uh, no.
Yeah.
The one of my closest friends, who is kind of a hybrid engineer composer, James McCartney, who wrote Super Collider.
Oh yeah.
Um, James and I were pals, and we didn't so much play music together, but
Yeah.
talk about tuning. And we played a little bit together, tuning and systems, and um, there was kind of experimental jazz a little bit there,
Mhm.
but really it's a singer-songwriter type
Right.
mecca. And
Yeah.
it was then too, and I really felt like very lonely. My friends were actually choreographers because of Deborah Hay, and it has to do the affinity that I had with her really has to do with the kind of broad kind of approach that she takes. It's philosophical and it's really, uh, you know, way beyond, how you're going to move your arm. It's
Right.
not a technical type of dance that she does. It's really kind of more about stage presence.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. So was this piece kind of like a one-off thing, or have you worked in this kind of mode since then? Or have you just mostly focused on the long string instrument
Mhm.
primarily?
Mhm. Well, I it was yeah. The fact that it was so monumental is like kind of a one-off kind of thing. But I would say that my album Ort, which is an album of
Right.
songs,
Yeah, I know that one.
relates. And I don't think of my music necessarily with the long string instrument as linear, and static, because I actually work using Pro Tools and collage.
Okay. Yeah.
So that relates in a lot of ways.
Right.
And I have a series of kind of instrumental works which I haven't released using auto harp and violin, koto, tunable instruments, and it has kind of a folky angle, but it's related in a way in
Are
that
you
it's
are those
sampler. I use a sampler, and I've gotten into sampling in a more technical way in that I can tune the
right? Yeah.
samples
At the
in
tune.
just intonation now. Yeah, so I'm working with Contact, and it's always a part of my work. I actually have a sample of the long string instrument,
Oh,
and I have like an iPad controller with Touch OSC with my instrument on it,
okay.
and
Yeah,
it's really, you see
yeah.
all
Great.
these.
Yeah,
This
all
is the
the
tuning system. It's a matrix system.
yeah, all the tuning relationships.
Yeah.
You can
So, I mean,
pull them off.
electronics, I'm not like exclusively, acoustically oriented. So it's always, kind of played a role somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense because maybe you can't always have your instrument set up or have access to it. So, but if you
Mhm.
can still, you have ideas that you want to try out, you can, you know, pull up samples or use a computer, something that's more portable,
Well,
really
that's
quick.
what it's gotten to now, but it's really took some time to develop, and like
Yeah.
this Touch OSC controller and the sample, and just really figuring out how to make a good sample. And now it really sounds realistic. It's pretty exciting, and I can do as you say, and um, you know have a fairly realistic sound, using this. Um, but yeah, it's always been just sort of like sort of at um, not so much a core method, but just sort of like an adjunct kind of
Right.
thing that has helped me along. Uh, my instrument, there have been periods in my life where I didn't have a big space,
Right.
and so that's actually when I worked on the auto harp.
Oh,
I could retune an auto harp, and I changed all the chords too. The buttons, were all pushing like different strings. Could like move those around with Velcro, and so I kind of turned it in other directions when I don't have access. But yeah, as a matter of fact, here in this studio, I only have viola range for my instrument.
okay.
And with this iPad, I can drop in lower range frequencies and work with chord voicing that
Oh,
way.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
play along
Um,
with it.
yeah, that's great. I mean, it's good
Yeah,
to be able to combine those things and also
yeah,
layer, like you said, you can take in stuff into the computer and layer it and collage it as well. But
yeah.
um, so, since I run a record store, I'm just curious about, a few things like, well, one, your listening practice, but also the first thing I wanted to talk about was there's kind of been a pretty big resurgence in vinyl, but also reissues, things coming out, older recordings. And
Yes,
it seems like, over the past handful of years, there's been a lot of great reissues of your work, but also new pieces of yours coming out. I'm thinking of the In the Sea 2 LP
okay.
set that came out not too long ago,
Yes,
and then obviously the reissue of your long string instrument LP, the original
right.
one, which
Yeah,
was impossible to find for so many years.
yes.
Um, how is that? How do you see that stuff, and how has it helped you, and how has it helped like get your music out into the world and have people hear it?
Well, it's really a great feeling. I mean, I'm getting like a lot of response, and a lot more people are hearing what I've done. I would say, especially with the duet album with Teresa Wong Harbors,
Yeah, that's
we're
great.
getting a lot of just sort of like a lot of new listeners there, a lot of interesting reviews. People seem to really respond to it. Um,
Yeah, I listened to that one the other day as well, and I'm I'm old friends with Lawrence English, who runs Room 40, and he's great. So
okay.
I was happy to see that you were doing something on the Room 40 label. It just seems like a great fit to me.
It's been wonderful. He's such a great guy, and
Yeah.
he actually organized our tour in Australia, it was about 5 years ago, and it was a wonderful experience. Teresa and I played harbors, you
Oh,
know, on tour in Australia, Sydney Festival, and then the fantastic festival in Tasmania, the
oh,
Monofoma.
yeah. Yeah, he brought me down a couple times to play music, and it was fantastic experience and really good shows, and got to like hang out with him and travel and stuff. So he's a good.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
what's your what's your listening practice at home? Do you listen to vinyl or CDs or streaming or all the above? And like what kind of music has been inspiring you recently?
Yes, well, I listen to any format.
Yeah,
Uh, about 4 years ago, I made it a point to really get everything in working order, like every format,
yeah,
and just have it be convenient and in a comfortable spot,
yes, that's important.
where the sofa is, and then, like a really kind of analog system with, you know, like, uh, like, uh, yeah, good. Yeah. So I have a CD player, and we have a turntable. I have a nice old '70s amp, like a one that I grew up with,
Yeah,
a tube amplifier. No, it's maybe not tube, but it's one of those, Pioneer
yeah,
amps. Yeah, and but honestly, I don't listen as much, and I'm not as knowledgeable as I would like to be on what has gone on and what is going on. I feel that I have to just sort of immerse myself in my own world, and it's hard enough, like, I don't know, just through the day, I'm working on my own composition
Right.
uh, explorations, setting up tools, and you
Right.
know, so and I like. There's a lot of popular music that I enjoy, but if I told you I listen between new music new music releases and say ethnomusicology and popular
Yeah.
music. I'm very partial to Otis Redding,
Oh
and I
yeah.
really love the stack sound.
Right.
And for me, that reminds me of childhood because I grew up in Memphis.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
and it was just everywhere on the radio, through my childhood, and I really, really love that warm horn sound, which, in a way, I'm trying to achieve with my long string instrument. And I'm working
Yeah.
with this tool that I don't know if you know about this work, but it's called the box bow, and it's like a percussive way of playing my strings with a small box. So
Oh, okay.
so it's kind of like I can do like harmonica kind of little bursts of sound, that have kind of reedy quality to it.
Huh. That's
Uh,
interesting. So that's
yeah.
kind of a new, sort of a new
Well, I
technique.
mean, it is, but I started with it 20 years
Right.
ago, so it's new. But I mean, I've written a couple of kind of longish pieces, but I'm embarking on a new commission with two guys. They're called the Living Earth Show, and
Okay.
Travis Andrews and Andy Meyerson. Andy is a percussionist, Travis guitarist, but they can kind of do anything, and they're so they're they are their musicianship is so great that I can set up complex rhythmic patterns, and they can achieve it. So it's going
Right.
to be exciting. Yeah, I'm thinking of it as kind of like plaid, or kind of like it's sort of like this texture that's just mechanical.
Yeah, that's great. Um, yeah, it's amazing how I think everyone has like sounds or records from their childhood that, and especially if you're making music or art or whatever, that just kind of stick with you, and you're sort of like reaching for that feeling or that sound that really captured you, when you were younger. Um, Even if you're doing something that, if someone said, "Oh, well, I'm playing this long string instrument and I want to sound like Otis Redding," people would
You
think you're
know?
crazy, but there's something there, like there's maybe a feeling from that period that you're trying to capture. But
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
I don't know. Like, I don't know what else to say. I mean, I'm, yeah, I don't know. With this sound system or whatever, I'm like, you know, well, my partner, Teresa Wong, she has much more knowledge about actually what has gone on and what is going on. And we do have a good collection, and people give us, records.
Right.
And so we're just like listening and just, just kind of in
Checking
the,
things out.
say in the evening or whatever,
Yeah.
reading and just put something on.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so I think just one more question, or a little more. Let's talk about what kind of future projects you're working on, and also if you have, do you have any plans on releasing more archival material, or how much archival material is unreleased, or do
Mm.
you want to get out into the world?
Yeah. Well, as far as the archive goes, I might have minded to the extent that I wish to, but I mean, I have, hundreds and hundreds of hours of recordings.
Right.
I do record quite a lot. I record myself. It's the only pragmatic thing to do because I can't put this instrument in a recording
Right.
studio. So I've had to learn,
Yeah.
and my learning evolves, and As a matter of fact, I've got a setup here that is really capturing the sound in a much better way than even was done on Harbors.
Hmm.
Uh,
Interesting.
so yeah, it's like as I say, this kind of accordion-esque kind of thing. I mean, um, it was. I would say that my sound has evolved since you heard it in Montreal.
Right.
Uh, like I've continued to design the resonator boxes. Um, I'm working with, I think they're putting out a better tone now, and I'm also working with omnidirectional microphones in recording.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I realize is that if you you know, divide the space that you're in, you know, the cubic space in a grid in all dimensions, where you place that microphone in the entire grid is so crucial.
Right.
And these this omni pair, like we experimented, you know, starting in a rough way with, like, say, moving it up and down 10 feet, you know, and then it came down to, you know, a foot up and down vertically, horizontally, and then how wide a pair is spaced,
Yeah.
and got it down to the inch. You could hear,
Wow.
and it's like, it really is like a sweeter sound.
That's
So I'm really excited about that. And then I'm also working with ribbon microphones.
okay. Do you
Uh,
set up do you set up multiple microphones in a space and then mix from there, or you
yes,
try to capture? Yeah, you have
no, multiple. No, because you kind of really have to get things from different angles,
right.
you know, otherwise it sounds kind of thin.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've got these Omnis, uh, DPA 4006. And then I'm working with Bumblebee uh, ribbon microphones. There's like this company in Latvia that does this kit. And so you can get like greatly discounted prices. And if you know, solder together about 5 joints and just like put the components together, you know, into
Mhm.
the tube. And they sound so nice. And I'm placing those, you know, at a closer range to the source,
Yeah.
you know, and they really have this also, like, this kind of harmonica reed sound inherently. Just this ribbons just sound reedy,
Yeah.
you know. It's just
Yeah.
like this really nice warmth, you know. But you were asking me about current work.
Yeah.
You know, so there's that project with the Living Earth show, and then I also have a commission with Jack Quartet. Jack Quartet is a string quartet in Brooklyn, and they specialize in playing, you know, just intonation
Yeah.
tuning, and they can read a the notation system is called Helmholtz-Ellis, which is a way of notating these smaller intervals, like in between the 12 notes on a scale, you know.
Yeah, that's funny because I was just in New York State a couple weekends ago at my friend Joe Brancefort's studio, and he's mixing a record by Jack Quartet right now. It's like a triple string quartet, and it's all in just intonation. And he played some of it for me, and it was fantastic. I was really.
Who's the composer?
It was one of the members of Jack Quartet. I can't remember the
Chris Otto is a
probably. Yeah,
composer.
yeah. I think it was Chris's piece.
Whoa, that's great.
Yeah, and I think Joe also runs a record label, so I think he's going to release this piece.
Which label?
It's called Gray Fade.
Okay,
Yeah, you should ask Chris about him.
okay,
But yeah, I was like, whoa, this is amazing. So,
that's great.
is your piece going to be just for string quartet or long
Well,
string?
no, I'm going to play with them.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Okay.
Can't wait to hear that.
Well,
And
thank you.
yeah, whatever else you're working on, it's always a treat um, to hear what you're making. So um, yeah, thanks for talking to me. I appreciate it, and we're hoping to get at least this Bisom press record out to a bunch of people, and um, I hope people will dig it as much as I do. So it's an interesting one. So
Thank you. Okay,
yeah,
thanks, Greg.
yeah, take care.
So Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.